Hello, very warm good evening. Requesting all the members to be please seated so we can start the first session. Requesting once again all the members for the fraternity, please feel seated and so we can start our first session.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back after the morning conversation. I'm joined today by some very esteemed industry stalwarts, right? Some of the real supply chain and technology leaders, not just for their respective companies, but some of the front runners in the entire country today. Right? So it's an honor for me to be part of this panel and to be asked to host this conversation. The topic of today is automation triumphs from the horse's mouth. And the crux of what we would want to speak about today is really about some of the technology systems that have been adopted by the business leaders in India. How have they adopted it? What kind of adoption curve have they seen? What kind of challenges have they faced? And very importantly, how do they see technology, automation moving as we progress over the next decade or so? Very pleased to be in front of you and to also have the opportunity to host some very, very esteemed panelists. Right? Starting from the far right, I think you'll have Mr. Ram Bhadora, who's the General Manager of Engineering and Projects, South Asia at Unilever. You have Mr. Rohit Mantri, who's the Head of Impact and Unified S&OP and Connected Planning at Tata Motors. You have Mr. Harish Lade, who's the Vice President of Supply Chain at Asian Paints. You have Mr. Asim Behra, who's the President of Daifuku Technologies. Daifuku Intralogistics, right? And finally, we have Mr. Arpit Raj, who's the Head of Logistics at Godrej Consumer Products Limited. With that, and I think we have run a little bit late, and therefore I would request the gentlemen to introduce themselves, but maybe, while you introduce yourselves, maybe I will also talk through some critical questions that we would want to speak about, right? Ram, would you like to start? Maybe introduce yourself and also talk about some of the adoption that you've seen at Unilever.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Ram Bhadoria. I head the engineering and projects in South Asia for Unilever. I also take care of automation, robotics, sustainability for South Asia, based out of Mumbai head office. And it's almost now 2 decades in Unilever as we speak. And I have been in different geographies as well. Was in Istanbul for Unilever Turkey for almost 3.5 years. Was a factory director in Chittagong in Bangladesh during the COVID times, and for almost 1.5 years. And then, of course, within India and in Sri Lanka for 6-7 months I was there. And I'm saying fortunate enough to go to Pakistan as well. Was in Lahore and talking to their Chamber of Commerce and Industry as well for the largest investment which Unilever did in Pakistan. So that's my background. I have a lovely wife and 2 kids. We are in different continents as we speak. So 2 of us are in Mumbai, rest 2 are in different continents. Yeah. Moving on to to elaborate on the question which is asked. So look, I would say that we have come a long way in terms of an automation in intra-logistics. From a Unilever perspective, or rather Hindustan Unilever Limited, as we call it in India, I have seen a shift change. In fact, we are driving it, we are one of the best in terms of our packaging, line, in our processing, all the products, what you use. I think from the line where the primary packaging stops, and from there till intra-logistics, means within the factory, how do you move that finished product, whether to, earlier days we used to call BSR, or a back of the factory warehouse. And then from there to, DCs, which is called distributed, distribution centers or warehouses across the length and the breadth of the country. I think this is an area which I would say in last 10 years has been the more focus in this part of the country. I'm saying in this part of the continent. And this is also the area where a lot of technology is also coming in, a lot of technology also changing much faster, where you have AMR, AGVs, we used to have magnetic strip changing to LiDAR communications, 3D scanning, coming in. And then how do I move the product? I think one of the basic fundamentals what we follow in FMCG industry is that how should I ensure that person doesn't touch the product, not even the primary packaging, and that's where the use of robotics, robots, whether these are, there are many companies who manufacture, robots, right, from ABB to Fanuc to KUKA and other. How do I use them for palletization? How do I use them for, movement, pick in place, or let's say a machine tending as well. So that's an area where we have, as I speak, I'm really proud to share that almost 60 robots, in my tenure itself, we have put in for the palletization within the South Asia, as a cluster. And as we are moving from the back of the factory, now this is also one area where if you look at the turnaround time of the trucks, which is called TAT, which I think the transport industry is also seeing or want to leverage it so that the same truck can at least be packed twice in a day, which is currently one in a day. You take 7, 8, maybe 9 to 10 hours to pack and then service it within 200 to 400 kilometers. This is an area which is still to evolving. Transport industry is also changing. And then, of course, when the product gets unloaded in the DCs, and as we speak in Unilever, we completed one ASRS, automated storage and retrieval system with stacker cranes, that is up and running in the central part of UP, almost 100 kilometers from Kanpur at a place called Sumerpur. The factory got inaugurated by Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi, 2.5 years back. And then as I speak, we are building another ASRS, automated storage and retrieval system at Silvassa cluster in one of our factories. And this is a solution which we are putting as a back of the factory come DC also, because direct dispatches are also, happening. So that's, as we speak, we are also imbibing technology. Some of the suppliers are also sitting here and whom we are also working with. I think I see a great shift which is happening using automation in this field, and we are also playing around in that. That's what I can share, with you now. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Rohit Mathri. Right, obviously. Mr. Mathri, while you introduce yourself, I think it'll also be helpful for you to just elaborate on, what are you seeing in the automotive industry, right? Obviously, FMCG and auto are very, very different industries, right? While Ram spoke about, some of the advances in the FMCG space, could you help us understand, how do you look at the overall automotive space, right from finished cars to, components?
Right. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rohit Mantri from Tata Motors. I'm leading a slightly different function, which is actually digital transformation of the entire supply chain. And it's across Tata Motors, so it includes our passenger vehicle business as well as commercial vehicle business. We've been at it since quite some time now, almost 4 or 5 years, and we have made significant progress. So when we talk about digital transformation of the supply chain, what do we mean, right? Simply put, what we are trying to do is actually kind of connect on one dimension. We are trying to connect all the stakeholders that are there in the supply chain. For an automotive company like Tata Motors, we've got a large community of suppliers, about 1,200 locations, etc., would be there, which supply daily to our 5 or 7 plants which are there. Inside the company itself, there are a large number of stakeholders, right? There are different plants that are there. There are large community of people who are managing procurement, right? And then we have the sales and marketing folks, and finally we've got our dealer community also, right? So all those guys, how do we actually bring them on a single platform so that collaboration and seamless working becomes better and better, right? So that is one objective that we've been working on, and we've been fairly successful at that. On another plane, for managing a supply chain, it's not just moving components from the supplier side, assembling it and supplying vehicles in our case. It's also about profitability. It's also about resource management. It's about efficiencies, etc. So there are allied processes apart from the core supply chain itself, like financial planning, manpower planning, resource planning, capacity planning, and a whole bunch of things. So how do you, on another angle, apart from connecting all the players, how do you also connect all the processes, right? So all of that also comes together in a single, single place. And while doing all this, we are actually, when we are using, I'm using the word digital, so we are actually connecting, using data, right? What we have done is we have put a platform on the top of all our existing systems, all our enterprise level systems. We've got the SAP, we've got CRM, we've got, and the engineering side, something called PLM, and a few standalone systems. So this platform sits on top of it. It's able to actually draw out all the data that is there, integrate it, right? So with that, what we are able to do, we've got all the players on a single, platform. We've got the various parameters, variables, dimensions for decision making, including numbers, rupees, crores, etc., as well as you are able to actually include the targets, plans, and actuals coming from, the enterprise level systems all on the same platform. So now this starts making the whole, view of the business or enterprise 360 degrees kind of in a sense, and not just for the leadership, because it's a bottom-up system. Every decision-making forum, every decision-making person, every decision-making point, we are able to provide this 360-degree view, right? So that is basically what we are driving at, and so a good part is actually, as of now, we have connected all our suppliers through our various 7-8 plants that are there, as well as our dealers, all on the same platform. We have connected our financial processes and as well as S&OP processes, and now we are picking up the manpower processes to put on the platform. So all that is all there, and it's all actually kind of no touch from our enterprise level system. So it's turning out to be a fairly powerful, proposition. Now that we have come to this level, we are able to start thinking of how we can use Gen AI, optimizers, etc. Because now we have all the data in place, right? The difficult part is getting the data in place. Now that you got all the data in place, now actually it's a runway for us, and it's going to be an exciting journey forward. So that's basically, what we've been doing. A little bit about, the perspective on general automotive, industry and space. Automotive industry actually touches everyone, as it's a product that everyone uses, sees, touches every day. It's been quite dynamic, and it's becoming fairly, tech-oriented almost by the day as we are going forward. We've got EVs, etc., which everyone knows of, but even beside that, the car itself is becoming more and more tech-oriented, and now we talk about the car more as a software-driven entity rather than a mechanical entity. So those are the things that we are, changes that are happening. With all that happening, and business models are changing. So with all that happening, the company needs to reinvent itself, especially in core areas like supply chain. Otherwise, it will get overrun. May not be from its colleagues from the same industry, but certainly from other tech industry, and they will just get wiped out. So it just needs to keep reinventing itself. Good, very strong lever is using digital and technology, which we are trying to attempt to do and modernize ourselves. Right? Thank you.
Thanks, Rohit. I think that's been very insightful. Next, I'd like to invite Harish. Right? Asian Paints has been one of the front runners of automation in India for the past 3 decades. Right? And Harish, maybe you can help talk us through the journey that you and Asian Paints has had over the past few years.
Hello, good afternoon. Very honored to be part of this panel. I'm Harish, been with Asian Paints for now 28 years. Spent a large part of it actually in the IT function, and in 2019 I actually moved to head supply chain. But during the journey as the IT professional, I was working very closely with the Asian Paints supply chain transformation journey, right? So been involved in a lot of advanced planning solution deployment, and typically in Asian Paints, IT and supply chain, or rather business and IT, work very closely to kind of really look at how to adopt technology, what is the business context in which we want to do it, and been fortunate to be part of a lot of digital transformation journeys in that sense. Coming to the topic, right, which is the star, and how while we looked at a lot of end-to-end planning solutions way back in the 90s. I think clearly when we look at all the decisions which we make from the supply chain perspective, whether it be warehouse automation, whether it be automating the factories from material handling systems, or putting a manufacturing 4.0 strategy, I think one thing which kind of always stands out is what is the business case which we kind of end up having. And I think our business cases always look at a kind of an end-to-end supply chain optimization rather than optimizing parts. Yeah, there could be opportunities of optimizing a particular operation, but really look at the end-to-end integrated supply chain view, and then see that if you want to really, let's say, impact a metric, let's say in terms of order fill rates, or lowering inventory, or reducing let's say damages during the shipment, or really bringing in safety, then that becomes an end-to-end kind of a view. So our journey actually into the automated warehouses started actually in 2005, 2006, and in that time frame, I think the problem which we are really grappling with, and you would obviously know that paint is a very, I would say, seasonal kind of a product. Now it's less so, because I think association of painting and season is kind of going away, right? But essentially still it remains a highly seasonal product, and still there is a lot of month-end skew. And it's obviously a made-to-stock kind of a SKU, so it's not really made to order in that sense. So obviously when you're producing in month 1, you're essentially meeting that month's demand, but also you're building towards a good opening inventory for the next month. And one problem which we kind of grappled as the SKU range was kind of going, was that when you used to deploy the opening inventory for the next month, you're essentially working on a higher forecast inaccuracy in that sense. So when our teams analyze the entire forecast patterns, they realize that actually on the 20th of the month, we could actually find a better estimation of the next month. But the SNOP cycle probably is already done the previous month, based on which you've already done the production plan and all of that. So the problem was, is there a way to postpone our deployment for next month's opening as late in the current month as possible? Which meant that, really you have to store the inventory upstream. And yeah, the easy solution is to kind of, have regional warehouses, have a distribution center and so on and so forth. But paint is a very peculiar product. It's a bulk product, and every time you touch it, it leads to a lot of damages because it's a very bulk and a heavy product. And hence the thought was that if we really keep all our product next, or rather within our factory, then, would that kind of work? And I mean, historically our factories were always designed to kind of, have 2 to 3 days of inventory. Everything used to get shipped out. And given how the land parcels are, factory never has enough land for, warehouse. They'll always say, oh, I will use that land to put more prime production equipment. So that's when I think our journey into warehousing and automation started, because the only option to move our inventory holding from 3 to 4 days to 7 to 8 or 10 days in the factory meant you had to go vertical. And beyond a certain stacking norm, there is no way you can go vertical without using, let's say, an automated storage and retrieval system. So I think that's where our kind of business case started. And really that kind of became the foundation for really bringing in a lot of automation, and at least at the scale at which we started operating, it really needed to run a very integrated project involving obviously the crane vendors, the conveyor vendors, obviously the software associated with it, linking back that with our SAP, and really run their very seamless operation. After that, I think now, what Mr. Ram mentioned, right? So all our factories actually have a DC within that factory. So it's like an end-to-end integrated line where as soon as the SKU gets packed, palletized, using robot, whatever, it straight goes into our DC, which is within the factory, and then from there you kind of build rest of the processes and automation. And then obviously as we moved forward, it meant more complexity in terms of, obviously in India nobody does palletized dispatch, at least in our industry we don't. So then it really means that you have to have a depalletizing system, you have to have pick and place systems, the whole works which comes when you kind of, move in a partial pallet load dispatch, all of that kind of then gets added to this complexity. So I think that's the way we have kind of looked at our automation journey, particularly from the warehousing and warehouse optimization perspective.
Great. Thanks, Harish. Very insightful. Next, I'd like to invite Aseem. Aseem, while you have some of the stalwart end users, right, that have spoken about some of their use cases, maybe you can talk about it more from the supply side, right, in terms of what kind of adoption have you seen across the widespread economy, as well as what's in store for us in the future?
Thank you, Farhan, for the question. Thank you. It's a privilege to be on this panel. So I represent Daifuku. Daifuku is a Japanese company. It is close to 90 years in existence. And all of that Daifuku does is material handling. In India, we've been here, the auto division has been here since early 2000s, serving the auto customers. And then from 2013 onwards is when we forward into the intralogistics automation segment. And I'm happy to say that we are the only global major intralogistics automation company who has a direct presence in India. And not only an office, but we have a factory and building another mega factory. And this is all made in India for India, not necessarily for export, right? So that's the kind of faith we have in the industry. And I can vouch that, back in 2013 when we started to now 2024, almost a decade, the runway, which maybe even as early as 2014, 15 wasn't as visible, is just massive now, mostly because India is growing. A lot of policies are being put in place that is enabling growth, enabling to multiply your manufacturing. And as a result, to better serve this industry, to better serve all of these customers, we've taken that call that we are going to build a factory in India. So that kind of speaks volume of the faith that we have in the growth story of Indian intralogistics sector. So I think most of the panel members here touched about SKU proliferation, increasing batch sizes, going vertical, piece picking, different challenges that's coming with the growth, right? And trying to do more in the same location. And our basic business purpose is to solve for that, to be able to enable those handicaps such that they can let you grow and you focus on what you do best. So obviously, in India, such automation, if you look at a traditional ROI method like they do in, let's say, maybe Japan or US, that does not really apply in Indian context. The ROI would be extremely high. Yet, the adoption for such systems, because of various other reasons, various other business reasons, is extremely high. So that's an anomaly in itself, that we are going ahead adopting a lot of this technology despite not having an Excel ROI. So that is something that we are very, very positive about. And one thing that we have done in the decade that we've been here in India is we have been able to grow along with our customers, and that is basically by giving them something that they need and not necessarily want. Because as you do automation for the first time or you're new to it, you have to take baby steps. You have to be willing to trust to leave your operations to someone just on a deck or a site visit at best to say that, okay, this system is supposed to give us this output, assuming I can condition my input. So it's a massive operational shift in the mindset of, such customers putting in these systems. And our stance has always been to be there through thick and thin to make sure that the system is up and running and that whatever belief and expectation that was, before the system went in is delivered, much more than what the original expectation was, and also build it modular enough so that as growth happens, the system doesn't become redundant. Because such systems you always plan for an X number of years out as the peak year. But that peak in a growing country like India would not be as planned. It could happen 3 years earlier, 3 years later. How do you build a system that is not underutilized or overutilized, or built in a fashion that is modular enough that you basically invest and grow as and when necessary? So that's primarily what we've been doing. And I think we can say that we have probably India's largest number of ASRS installed in a matter of decade. So that is, that something speaks volumes of where the industry is going, the adoption and our commitment to this particular segment. And for the future, I think as we build factory, we're going to localize more. Our lead time is going to get lesser because such projects take quite a bit of planning. And then the execution time is the one that gets squeezed because you have to go to market sooner. So we're looking to reduce the lead time. And obviously there will be a pricing benefit that happens because we're going to make it in India. So we'll look to pass that on to the market so that the adoption and enablement can be quicker. Thank you.
Thanks, Haseem. And very encouraging to hear some of the investment that some of the global suppliers are making in the country. Next, I'd like to invite Arpit. Arpit, again, Godrej Consumer has been one of the front runners in technology adoption in the country. Again, would be very helpful to understand your journey in terms of automation as well as in terms of integrating it with your overall business systems.
Firstly, thanks, Farhan. Thanks for allowing me to share my point on this particular subject. So hi everyone, I work with and take care of the logistics and customer service for Godrej Consumers. Been with the organization for close to about 10 years, and before I sort of start on how GCPL has adopted to supply chains transformation as well as automation, and over the last 10 years, would want to sort of draw or take a step back and tell what exactly has been about the perspective of what has actually forced us to sort of do this over the last decade. The first thing I think which has been important for all of us, and many in the room would agree in that when I joined GCPL back in 2014 to where we are now, the advent of omni-channel, which is in terms of e-commerce and modern trade, has gone up. And that is true, I think, not only for CPG industry, but all consumer-based industry now. As much as we like about omni-channel in terms of servicing, the demand from the omni-channel is very different in terms of the assortment that is required, in terms of the shelf life that is required, in terms of the service levels that is required. And hence, I would say, the organizations who are supplying to these omni-channel partners will need to change their supply chain in order to supply it better, or else it will go to the competitor. So that's one piece which has sort of helped us, or rather forced us to change the way we sort of perceive the traditional way of servicing the customer. The second, I think a lot of the fellow panelists have also said in what the advent of the technology that has happened. I think it has also been a little bit about the case of regulation changes that has happened. Many would agree that prior to the GST era, when we had a 2% CST, almost all organizations had a CFA for individuals because everybody wanted to sort of save on that 2% CST. Now what has happened is after that, people are designing their warehouses or network purely basis demand. That is something which has happened specifically after 2017, and that has helped us in two regards. One is it has allowed us to consolidate a lot of efforts into one place, be it in terms of warehousing or transportation. Secondly, when you sort of consolidate, that helps us to invest significantly behind warehousing. I was having a chat with one of my colleagues, and when we were reflecting back about half a decade ago, people would not sort of talk about grade A plus warehousing that often, or that they are doing now. They are the clear specifications as far as the flooring, the roof, the height that is concerned is now very much available in the public domain, and secondly, it is recognized by a lot of players already. So many people come to me on to discuss on warehousing. They are very clear on what are the various aspects of warehousing that is required from a CPG domain or a consumer perspective. So that is in a nutshell what has happened in terms of the industry perspective. Now GCPL as such, I would say is a combination of both, something being forced by the consumer or the customer based change, as well as our own intent to sort of ensure that we reach the consumer as fast as possible. So the first leg that we sort of started with in 2014-15 was an end-to-end ERP adoption, and which sort of helped us to sort of try and integrate majority of our sub-functions together, right from the retail to the back end of the, I would say, our vendors who are our raw material and packing material vendors. And obviously it has not been a single cycle. There has not been feedback and loops that has happened over time. I remember Rohit mentioned about data being one critical factor. I think India, the way we are organized typically, and majority of our sales specifically in consumer facing industry happens in general trade, which is largely grappling with the lack of data. And that is something which has happened over time. But what has happened also is that because of the advent of modern trade, as well as our ability to record data in a much more and a much efficient manner, that has significantly helped us. So that is a journey that we started in 2014, and then we helped that significantly improved as far as our forecast accuracy, as well as the ability to supply, understand consumer patterns in around 2016-17. The other thing which has happened is on account of our interface with customer or the consumer has become a lot better. In terms of when a salesman used to go, say in 2014-15 or prior to that, majority of the ordering used to happen on a pen and paper. Large chunk of the ordering that happens right now is predictive, wherein the tool can tell you, because the consumer or the concerned retailer has bought XYZ 3 weeks ago, it is likely that it will be stocked out today, and hence you should be able to pitch that product to the retailer. This is something which has also helped us in terms of predictive analytics and ensuring that we are able to predict which particular product will go out of stock at, say, some of our CNFA, and hence that information goes back all to the backend. The third part, I think, which a part of it I've highlighted in terms of warehousing as well as transportation, is in terms of the change in the way we have been dealing with or planning investments. Large chunk of our investments have been OPEX led. I would say about, say 1.5 decades ago. Majority of, we would sort of prefer keeping majority of our investment under OPEX, saying that, okay, it is a small mover for now, I can quickly move out of it, hence my risk is low. That intention has changed now. We, GCPL as an organization is much more clear in terms of investing behind projects, specifically which is looking at long-term expansion plans and ensuring that we are ready for the future perspective. So we are, I would say the other critical thing which has happened is change in our own strategy to sort of cut back OPEX, invest in long-term CAPEX, and then ensuring that the benefit at the end of the, say, a certain period comes over time. Lastly, what I would say is that what we have sort of focused on is to try and ensure how, even if incorrect, how can we ensure that the manual intervention in any process is minimized. Even if we are able to sort of work with partially correct data, let that data be captured automatically versus somebody else capturing it manually on a daily basis. So I think these are 4 broad buckets in how GCPL has sort of evolved, and that is what we are sort of trying to target for the future.
Thanks, Arpit. I think that's very, very well articulated. I think there was a lot to consume. I think, and there are so many questions that I have, and I'm sure a lot of you have. But I'm going to focus on a few key topics. I think the first one that we'd like to talk about is adoption of automation on an end-to-end basis, right? You know, Rohit, Ram, Rishi all spoke about automation and integration across the supply chain, right? And maybe Ram, you know, if you can just start with just telling us about how do you practically implement this, right? When you look at India as a country, obviously it's a complex country in multiple different regions, multiple different languages. It's a fast developing country, right? Road infrastructure, logistics infrastructure, city infrastructure, the location of industries and general growth of cities, and not just our top 20 cities, but also some of the smaller long tail cities are actually growing, changing very rapidly. Right? So how do you maintain an integrated supply chain, right? And as well as cater to the automation needs of your business?
Sure. So from an Unilever perspective, we move almost 45 lakh tons of the product on an annual basis. We move from our factories to DCs to stockists, wholesaler, and then of course to general trade and modern trade as well. Now what has changed, you know, in the last, I would say last 1 decade is the shift towards the modern trade. You know, one is, we call it as an MT customer, which has happened, especially in the FMCG sector. And what you see is that you have now, like, you know, I'm saying DMart, Reliance, earlier it was Big Bazaar, and so on and so forth. You know, a lot of big players have also come in. Now for them to get a product from our factories, and also the segmentation what they need, you know. When I say a segmentation, for all of you to understand, let's say I make close-up. I can make a close-up, or I have a close-up which is in 50 gram, 25 gram, 100 gram, 125, 175, 200 gram. Now, I'm saying from a let's say the buyer perspective, or let's say a DMart, they will want a segmentation of the product to come in, and also the SKU level. Now, when we have in our factories, and as Arpit was also explaining about, you know, the integrated, you know, S&OP process, we classify as a class A, class B, class C, and a class D SKU, which means that class A SKUs, for a Unilever would be close to around 500 SKUs, which we daily make in all our 27 factories in India. Now, when you look at 500 SKUs I'm making daily in my 27 factories, these need to be moved within the day zero to the, let's say that at least the DCs, So we monitor what is called as day zero. And why we do it, I'm sure you would have seen the profile of the customers, the way it has changed from e-commerce to d-commerce to q-commerce now, quick commerce, companies like Zepto, Blinkit, you want in 15 minutes to get service, How will they service a product when they do not have a product from us in the time in which they need, So it needs a very highly, I would say, a channel which is evolving, a channel which is coming up very fast, and hence they need the service at the back end to be serviced at a much faster pace. And that's where, all those dark stores are coming in, the sellers have on the Amazon is also coming in. So one is, of course, the product to be available to these companies on time, in full, with quality. I think this is where the problem arises with quality, because I'm sure when you go and buy any of Unilever's Lakme product, you will not want any scratch on, even on the primary packaging. Why would you, you are not getting any discount on it. You are paying the full price for any of the Lakme products or your better halves. Why would you not have an excellent packaging and with a metallized, in fact, packaging which is glossy and shining? It's your right also, because you're paying the full money as well. Now, how do I move in such a way? And for you to understand, at some point of time, I was moving my Lakme products by air to service it into different, because I was producing in my Haridwar factory, and I was moving by air to Chennai, just to service the customers in Chennai for an Lakme. Now, this kind of a pricing will not suffice on a long-term basis. So that's where the integrated supply chain, and that's where the extended supply chain, which is till the, let's say, the stockist and the wholesaler, and also feeding into the general trade, has arisen. And why is automation necessary? I don't think with the size of the population, what we have, and the aspiration level of the people, what we have, you can service with a normal ways of working. It's just impossible to do it. You can service it not on the day zero, not even on day one, or we call it as N+1. It is just not possible, And if you have to service it, you need to have an automation in your supply chain, integrated supply chain model, which SKU to be made, where can I make the SKU? And just for an example, I give you, let's take a case of a Lux. I can make Lux as a soap bar into my 7 factories across India. At the same time, I can mix it. Now, if there's a market in Delhi, where should I make the Lux? Should I make it in my factory at Calcutta? Should I make it at Haridwar? Should I make it at Pondicherry? Should I make it in, so where should I make that? That is what will get determined by the data, data analytics saying that if you make that soap in this factory, the cost of soap landing in Delhi would be so much. So it gives you an segmentation, it gives you an assortment. It also, we also want a cost-effective supply chain to be serviced. Otherwise, you just can't service at a cost, and because consumer will not be able to pay at that a price, And that's where the integrated supply chain based on data analytics, and my friend Rohit also mentioned about the AI and the ML, which has come in. We call it as a Gen AI, which is coming in, and across India, and rightfully so, called by Fazan, that in India we have mini India, which is, so if you have to win in mini India, you must have a winning proposition to win in mini India, It's not only the formulation or the packaging, I can give you a classical example. I make home care liquids, Surf Excel, enzymatic home care liquids, which you use for your washing machine and wash the clothes. It's a fabric wash. Now, interestingly trend, it sells more in the south and the east. And you might say, okay, why in the west it is not selling? Maybe the per capita income of the two states of Gujarat and Maharashtra is much higher than any of the other state. But they still want to continue with the powders, Surf Excel, enzymatic powder only. So that's a trend when you go into data analytics, when you go into a science to understand that this is what is selling in the east and the south. This is what is selling in the west. And with the introduction of GST coming in, the goods and the service tax, now it is no more preferential to make it in one state and transport it in another state. It has to be very consumer centric, which means that what is the cost to service a consumer in Delhi or in Mumbai? Why should I transport from Calcutta or from any other, I need to have within a vicinity. And that is what has generated. So we had driven a project called Nakshatra, and which is like having a multi-category factories all across East, which means that in my factories across length and breadth of India, I have factories which make soap, which also make Lakme, which also does, dishwash, Vim. Foods factories, like in Nasik, I make ice cream. I also make Kisan jams. I also make Nor soups as well, because that is how it will drive the cost optimization and also drive synergy into the supply chain model, which is extending beyond the factories as well. One of the very interesting thing, and that's where I think the fraternity has to come together, is you have a truck, okay, truck is loaded in the factory, it goes to DC. What happens in the return journey? It is traveling as an empty truck, right? So the truck owner is paying for that, He's not getting advantage in terms of a return journey. So he will charge us from both ways, forward and return. I'm not getting advantage because the truck is coming, empty. And that's where I think we are also collaborating with companies like ITC, and I think one or two projects have also come up. How do I utilize the return journey to optimize the supply chain, because cost is one of the biggest drivers into this. How do I keep my cost constant and still give you a better quality product at a most optimized cost? So that's where we are now using, a lot of intervention coming in from a digital transformation journey. Harish also alluded on that part of it, but it's a fairly complex, I can tell you. I gave you one example of it. I have 500 SKUs which can be made in 6 or 7 factories. It's not so easy to optimize and the trucks, and you don't get a truck. You ask for a 20-tonner truck, you will have a truck coming in at maybe 8 ton, maybe open body, closed body, half body. Container will not come in, because that's how the industry is. The industry is not that we have matured in terms of, okay, you ask for a 40-foot container, the container will always come to you. The truck unions or the truck, biggest manufacturers, they don't own the trucks, whether it's Western Carrier or TCI, they will own only a partial truck, rest they will pick up from the open market. And when you pick up open market, you don't have that choice of it. So it's a bit complicated, but I have seen in the last 10 years, I think what progress we have made, I think the whole of the 50 years we would not have made it. So it's moving with speed, and I'm sure some of the suppliers, as Asim also, representing Daifuku, I think setting up a base in Make in India. I would say we need to move from Make in India to Design in India, because still you design it outside and then make in India. And then when you have some problem, you go to the designer who's based in some other country. So my request to Armstrong, Dematic and the others also is to not only make in India, but design in India as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ram. I think that was very insightful and a lot for us to consume. Very quickly, Rohit, if you can help, help us, understand the journey that you've been taking at Tata Motors in terms of, building this end-to-end visibility as well as integrating the automation into the overall supply chain.
Right. So a few pointers from my side. Like I mentioned, we embarked on this journey of transforming the entire supply chain for a company of the size of Tata Motors, right? We've got two big businesses, passenger and commercial vehicles. So what kind of few things that helped us? I must be honest, I keep trying to figure out, what are the things that actually, moved the needle. So some of the things that I feel that actually helped us was, a few principles if I could share, is that one thing almost at the outset, we were clear that we are going to approach this like a transformation exercise, not a IT implementation, automation, or software implementation kind of a thing. It gives a different flavor. When we are talking about IT implementation, automation, it's like saying, okay, how do you automate something that's already there? And in the process, can we improve a few things as we go along? When we talk about transformation, it is actually rethinking the basics, right? So people, process, as well as technology, all three were considered in the remit. Another thing was that we said that anything that, in a sense, impacts or connects to supply chain or SNOP automatically comes within the scope, whether we know it today or not. We go by the objective of transformation and not by saying that, okay, this is what we will change and this will not what we will change, which in a sense in traditional project management perspective, it's not, the common practice, right? In project management, first you'll say, what is the scope? And I'll work on that. Here it was like, what is the objective? And scope we'll manage as we go along. The thing that this kind of approach helped us is that we found that, the problems for any business, you'll find problems in one corner of the business, but the cause is entirely at some other end, right? What somebody at the demand end is doing is affecting somebody at the supply side. What supply side is doing is affecting somebody at the vendor end. What vendor is doing, not doing is in turn affecting, sales. You don't know what is happening where. So by actually taking the whole basket together, we were able to look at it from a top-down perspective and identify issues and areas, and where people, when I say people, behaviors, culture, way of looking at things, if that needed to improve, then that's where we focused. We straightened that out. If there was something to be done on the process side, that got fixed. On the IT side, idea was to actually try and bring all those islands and pockets onto a single platform. And as soon as you start bringing stuff on a single IT platform, almost automatically two things start happening. One is a lot of non-value added activities being done in various pockets start disappearing. The other thing is simply because we are able to actually put a lot of things on a common platform and all the information is available, you are able to start automating a whole bunch of things. So you are able to start seeing a lot of benefit straight away. And we kind of tried to show all stakeholders what kind of benefit we are going to get in, I should say, we had milestones almost every 90 days to try and show, some sort of benefit of sorts. Those are the things that helped us move forward on the transformation side. A couple of other things I might talk about is that we had the principle that, whatever we are going to, metrics that we are going to put, right, will follow the principle that we will measure all our numbers, right? Financial numbers, performance numbers, volume numbers, production numbers, whatever, are going to be measured at a level which is what touches the customer, right? So we had seen in the past, the production guys used to actually show their production performance at a certain level of granularity of the metric. sales guys would be talking at a certain other level, etc. We said everything comes down to if it's touching the customer, I'm going to measure at that level. The metrics suddenly became very harsh, right? Very unforgiving. But we said that we will stay at that level. The other principle we said is that all metrics have to be reported at an org level, right? That means at a business level itself. Again, in the past, there were various functions who used to, present their performance data, etc., etc. There were exclusions. They said, oh, this is not within our control. This is something that some other function used to manage. So a lot of exclusions and say that my performance therefore is one way or the other. So by ensuring that all our metrics now, at least which come from the system, are the ones which are we are able to trace back all the way to the customer level, or at a aggregated level we are able to show at a business level. That has changed the perspective of how various stakeholders within the company see their own performance and see the way forward. Other thing that we also third principle of sorts that we kind of enforced in a sense is to say that the whole system will be in a sense no touch, right? We will ensure that any automation, any metric, anything that is happening on the platform has to pick up data from the enterprise level system, etc. And nobody will say that okay, ye half data main manually dalta hu, something else will come from system, etc. So with that, what happened is it brought a focus on ensuring that quality of data which is coming from wherever it has to come from needs to get fixed before somebody starts seeing real value. It actually delayed some of the implementation because you don't see the result because you have to straighten out, clean up your databases, your data. You have to bring in discipline. A lot of people had to start following certain disciplines, all that. But we said that you first do that, then you'll start seeing whatever other benefits. And the benefits we always kept bringing to the fore, saying that, okay, all this can be automated, all this non-value added activity can go, etc., etc. So these few things are the few things that, we kind of did, which helped us, take this rather large end-to-end, transformation forward.
Thanks, Rohit. Very, very insightful to hear some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them. I think my next question, I think I'll lead with Aseem. Maybe if you can, you spoke about how ROI models in India are not necessarily as clear-cut as they are in certain other geographies. Obviously cost of labor, other factors contribute to this. But when you go to a customer, right, and maybe not some of, again, the industry, the leading thinkers in the industry, but when you go to the next tier of customers, how do you convince them that automation actually is the right investment for their business?
Thank you for the question. That's a very good question. So there are certain attributes that I think we've also observed doing about a decade of business here. And that is basically with India growing, which means everybody is growing, right? The companies are growing. And as you grow, as Mr. Ram was saying, that you cannot grow doing what you've done in the past, right? So some of the patterns that we've observed is where, when somebody is growing double digit and they have fewer manufacturing locations, right? And they have business plans of doubling or tripling themselves within a 5-year or a 10-year target. You simply can grow to that scale, to those targets, doing what you're doing today. So that's where we kind of go in and say, okay, it's not that you're going to build 5 factories. It's difficult. Maybe even if the land parcel, even if everything else was taken care of, it'll be difficult to manage 5 factories. Rather, you would be wanting to grow or manufacture times 5 in the same factory. And a lot of our customers are also owner-driven companies, which unlike some of the big multinationals also don't have access to finding the best of talent in multi-locations to manage something. So they would rather grow something within the geography of what they already have, what they can manage. So whenever you need to scale, whenever you need to double, triple your market, in a stipulated amount of time, there is no choice but automation. Now, does this apply to all the segments? Not necessarily. So for example, food and beverage. So there are certain things there such as first in, first out, various batch sizes, handling of the product being handled as little as possible. So all of that, when you start explaining them that, okay, when you have to do it double, you cannot hire double manpower. You cannot double your touches. You would rather ensure that you have a FIFO system such that, whatever you produce is sitting at a retailer rather than in your factory because somebody picked up the wrong pallet. So I think when you talk about this and walk them through this journey and talk about the current issues and show them that such of those issues will only grow exponentially as you scale. So therefore, you have to have a system that checks a lot of these things and it's not left to somebody's judgment. They kind of get it and they understand. Then again, it comes to the question of putting that capex, because anybody would rather put that money into setting up a new factory or increasing their current factory production. But I think automation in warehouse can be looked at as money saved is money earned. So I think we'll have to go and explain those few pockets, which when managed through automation as a de facto is going to give them a better gain to their bottom line. So quite a few of these discussions happened, and also we break it down to what do you need today. Let's build something modular that as you have piloted this, you are happy with what you have gotten out of this, we can then scale it up in a fashion that you'll have minimal downtime when the expansion happens. Thank you.
Thanks, Aseem. I think it would be helpful to have similar conversations, or you actually passing this message on to as many companies as we possibly can across the industry. Arpit, you spoke about your thinking changing from an OPEX heavy model to a CAPEX heavy model. I would just like to understand some of the thinking behind how does the ROI make sense, right, from a short term and more importantly from a longer term perspective.
So I think there are two parts to this question. One is in terms of how is it going to make a difference on both in terms of the balance sheet, in terms of how the organization is placed, obviously. So how is the cash flow looking like? And you've got certain internal metrics in terms of EVA calculations or the internal rate of return that you sort of look at, okay, if I've got an IRR of say 15 plus, this would make sense largely at a, say, if the investment is going to benefit over a 10-year period, that largely is something that you look at. The second is obviously in terms of the benefit is going to pull in. So when you say that you have, say, you're moving from implementing something across 40 warehouses versus if you're implementing a similar around much smaller setup, but a larger setup wherein your overall in terms of your footprint is not shrunk, but the number of facilities has. So if you move from 40 warehouses to 20, your ability to invest in CAPEX becomes much, much more. So consolidation of network, I think Ram also spoke about it in some pieces, is that how can you sort of create a multi-product facility, both in terms of manufacturing as well as warehousing, so that you can go and invest behind it. That is something which majority of the organizations, specifically in CPG, has done it. If you look at the trend, there are many people, including GCPL, who's cut back on the number of warehouses that we have. So this was the second part. The third is in terms of usually what happens in CAPEX versus OPEX is that CAPEX largely is depreciating, where OPEX over time, what happens is that it appreciates because there's something which is there in manpower, you will have inflationary increases. So over time, what happens is, I think if you've got a large OPEX versus large CAPEX, usually it automatically over say a decade time or say half a decade, it would make sense depending on the investment that you sort of look at. So these are three broad things that I would want.
Thanks, Arpit. Insightful. And I think we're very quickly running out of time, unfortunately. Maybe I would just request Harish to round up the conversation, and, obviously, with Asian Paints being a leader in the automation space for the last 30 years, right, you would have seen multiple cycles of investment in automation. So, just like your thoughts and your insights in terms of how do you think about the return on investment, right? And related to that, how do you see the automation journey and any advice that you have for a company looking to adopt some of the latest automation going forward?
So I think India has always grappled with this dilemma that, labor is cheap, so automation doesn't make sense, right? But I think what the panel kind of largely was alluding to is that we are definitely on a very different growth path as a country. And I think coupled with that, I think the customer expectations are going in a very different zone. So the overall complexity which each organization in the industry is dealing with is just mind-boggling. And I think the only way you can address that customer expectation is to really integrate the power of data decision making backed with automation and execution. So, you can get all the data and, make very good planning decisions. But at the execution level, if we start faltering or don't really respond to that scale, then, the customer expectation will get unfulfilled. So I think overall, as we kind of really look at the next, and, we all talking about India going on the developed economy journey and all the industries are really firing up, some of the constraints of the country will stay, right? We are still, a country in terms of logistics particularly. Yeah, there are infrastructure projects, etc. happening, but it's still a very different country compared to what, let's say, US is. It's still a very, I would say, 5x, less than 5x the area, but population and the customer and the growing customer at a different level. So there is no choice but to really invest into automation. And particularly what I also see as a trend is this whole area of labor, etc., particularly in the way we, handle goods. We have to shift to, goods coming to man rather than man going to pick up the goods. I think that definitely a shift we'll have to kind of get into. So overall, when, at least in our experience, when we look at an end-to-end business case, and at least I remember that in Asian Paints, I don't think we have made a decision without, the Excel ROI also coming in. So I would say when everybody looks at their own business model and the trajectory they want to get into, definitely the answer in terms of investing in automation will definitely find that. I think we have to just let go of that mindset that, labor is cheap, because in the long run, you will start hitting roadblocks and some of the areas which affect particularly the logistics. And I mean, in a lot of forums, we hear about drivers not being available. So all those things, right? So I think just having the labor is not going to solve the problem. You'll have to get into the world of, automation backed with data to really kind of, really ride the India growth story in that sense. I mean, I tried to summarize that, and yeah, it's hopefully
I think
it captures the
very,
essence,
very well summarized, right, Harish. And with that, I'd like to thank each one of you. It's been very, very insightful for me, and I'm sure everyone in this room. I think some of the thoughts about end-to-end automation, about having a clear thought process behind the business need and linking that to the investment, as well as maybe thinking a little bit ahead into the future and not necessarily be constrained by our current notions or preconceived notions that we have about the current situation and the economy. Right? With that, I'd like to thank you all and thank all the gentlemen for taking out their valuable time and sharing some of the insights with us.